All right, Manuel, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so to set a little bit of background here, for people who aren't familiar with you, you are someone who has done a whole lot of work with LLMs. You've tried a bunch of different ones, you've got a bunch of different workflows under your belt, and I'm really excited to see a particular workflow that you're going to demonstrate today, which is just going really hard on leaning on the LLM. Not doing like back and forth, not really uh, micromanaging it, perhaps, and just really just kind of letting it go. So why don't we just start by getting your impression of how do you think about the difference between something like, say, vibe coding and something like AI-based, engineering? Where do you sort of draw the lines around those terms and the different styles of ways people can interact with AI agents?
That's a great question because there's a lot of pushback from like professional engineers against vibe coding, right? Like I define it as kind of using the LLM without really looking at the output code. More like staying like not caring about what comes out, like obviously caring about how it works, but not really looking at the code is how I define it. And obviously, it's not like the end all be all, right? Like I'm not just going to vibe everything and push it to prod, but I think it's a really interesting new modality of writing software in the same group as like, oh, you can like do pair programming to write software, right? You can do like whiteboard designs to do software. You can do rubber ducking to do. You can do RFCs. Like it's kind of a new modality to explore or even build what you want to build.
Gotcha. So from your
So
perspective, vibe coding is essentially a tool worth having in your toolbox. It's not something you should use all the time. It's not something you should refuse to use. It's somewhere in between. It's something that, in the right circumstances, can be the right tool for the job. Is that fair?
yeah, and more and more as models become more capable, more it becomes more and more important to know how to do it well or how to. The good thing is like not looking at the code means that someone who's not technical can do it as well, right? Like the and then using that as basically someone who's not technical but being able to like someone speaking Spanish to me and I don't really know Spanish and I use Google Translate, which is it's not perfect but we can have a great conversation. That's kind of the same of like instead of having a UX designer give me like wireframes and give me like Figma designs, suddenly they can express themselves in like React code, which might for me be easier to understand. So
Gotcha.
I think it's really important to kind of lean into it these days.
That makes sense. Okay, well, let's see some of this in action because the kind of the goal here is we want to help people understand like what does a workflow look like that works and gets the most out of this technique. So I think you have a plan for some way you can demo your workflow and how you actually vibe code things to get to a good result.
Yeah, I'll show. So I've got my iPad, which is kind of a replacement for my sketchbook because I've always kind of written software on paper, like doing designs on paper to take a break from the computer. I was planning to build like a Doodle clone, the Doodle to schedule like calendar meetings. 45 minutes is really short, so we'll see how far we get. But so usually the first thing I start with, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but let me share my iPad, is that I'll usually start. Can you see the iPad? Yeah.
Yes.
And you can still see my camera, right?
Yep.
All right, good, good. So I'll usually start by just like drawing on paper and kind of like I have an idea for a doodle clone. And I'll start like writing, oh, what do I want it to do? What kind of looks do I want? And so I'll do this ideation, which is going to create a bunch of additional ideas. But it's also going to start to create like some ideas for an API, some ideas for a spec. And I'll do that. It's fun to do it, right? So this is usually what I do. This is usually what it looks like. I haven't done it for the doodle itself, but as you then progress these ideas that start to crystallize, then I'll switch to a more vibe coding mode where I will use these different tools like ChatGPT in the browser, Cloud AI I use quite a bit to do UI prototypes, like any code, any tool that you want, since they're pretty much all the same at the end of the day that will then start creating different artifacts that are that are more relevant. And as part of those, like code is obviously one, but you can also generate specs and not read them, right? That to
Sure.
me also falls under like kind of vibe coding. Is I'll just generate a lot of documents that I just don't read, but that I know will be useful for the future. So that all falls into it, and then maybe I'll show what that looks like for quickly for the Doodle clone, because I'm not going to do the full. This will usually take me like 20 minutes or so. So if I have a Doodle clone, maybe what I want is like an AI supported feature to create, to create calendar entries, because that's the thing that annoys me about Doodle is if I want to say I'm free every evening from 5 to 7 except Thursday, I have to click an insane amount of times to do it. So
Yeah.
you still keep the same view of like the week, right? Like week view, and then maybe you can drag and drop availability, but you also have like a little chat down here. So I'll start thinking about these different features, right? And the cool thing is I can take a screenshot of this and paste it into Claude. I can do all kinds of features here. I've developed some techniques over time that might be a little bit less obvious. I'm going to go over them pretty quickly. One of them that I really like using is like domain specific languages as an intermediate point that is code, but is actually like simple enough that I can actually still read it.
Uh-huh.
And so, for example, we can use a DSL here to represent the state of a doodle, right?
So when you say DSL, do you mean like working code, or is this kind of pseudocode that just gives you an idea?
It's yeah, it's domain specific language. So it's a language that's specific to the domain that's like kind of in between real code. It is real code because it can be interpreted
Okay.
deterministically, but it's also something that's like kind of readable and also very tailored to what you want to do,
Sorry, so maybe I should be
right?
more
So
specific. What I mean is like, is this code intended to actually be executed, or is this just for reading?
both. It
Okay.
depends on what you want to do. It's like a shortcut to, for example, do a lot of spec design with few tokens, for example. But here I'm going to use the DSL approach to do two things: to represent the state of a doodle, to kind of have like a database schema-ish thing. And then the other one is like, if I have an AI chat in here, I want to parse actions out of this AI chat, which you could do with tool calling, right? But I
Mhm.
find interpreting DSLs to not only be like more efficient, but also just more flexible. So, um, so this is going to be the second one, right? It's like a set of actions to populate the doodle. Um, and this is very fast. Like I'll usually I like taking my time and just chilling. So I'll take like 20 minutes, and I can do this anywhere, right? Like I can do this at the coffee shop. I can do this while traveling.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm fast forwarding, so I'm going to switch to my computer,
Cool.
and I'll show like maybe the first thing that I like showing is my prompting style is pretty much. I think this is my home page. Yeah, I've pinned it. This is my prompting style. it's there's all these complicated workflows with like spec documents and agents MD and all of that. Like I don't use that. I always start from like an empty prompt. And I use Manus a lot, which is kind of Sonnet on auto. Uh, and usually I start that, right? Which is build a doodle calendar scheduling clone with AI chat capability. And then I was just like,
So that's it.
go. And so
That's the
this,
whole prompt. It's gonna let it
that's
roll.
my whole prompt, right? Like, why would I
Wow.
put in more? Because everything that you start adding this has like the potential to derail the LLM. If I kind of let it choose, not only do I let free reign to the system prompt that the builders of Manus might have put in there, right? Like maybe it says like, oh, use React and use this and use that. And then if I come in and I say like, oh, use PHP and HTMX, it's like, okay, now you have like two competing things. Um,
Interesting. So for those who aren't familiar with Manus, what makes you choose Manus over? I mean, there are many alternatives, right? What is it you like about it?
it, it's the first one I kind of used and it works like decently well. I call it like the Sonnet roulette because you never know what's going to come out. It can be like complete complete nonsense, right? It will say like, I completed everything. And you look at it, it's like a shell script that says echo hello. And you're like,
Uh-huh.
okay. But sometimes something really amazing comes out. And then often it's like 30% kind of useful. It's like mid-jank, but sometimes something really cool comes out, and then
Okay, so
maybe
you're
one.
kind of aiming for something that is about 30% useful. You're not expecting that you put in that prompt and you get out a fully working app that you can ship to production. You're expecting something, your expectations are a lot lower than
It happens sometimes, right? But like once you have this expectation of like, oh, sometimes I get something really cool out of it. How do I get there? You like set yourself up for frustration and to be like kind of a rat with a lever, where you're just like, oh, one more inference and it will work.
that. Uh-huh.
Um, which I fell into, right? And it's like, as an engineer, I want to do engineering. Like I want to know that I make like constant progress towards something.
Hmm.
So um, when an LLM fails to do what I wanted to do, I know that um, I tried hard enough, right? Like if it succeeds always, it's like, okay, I'm not exploring what these tools actually can do, since they evolve all the time. And I also redefine like the useful thing that comes out of it. Like if the LLM outputs something that doesn't work, it's like kind of when you write a traditional programming language and you do a run and you get like a syntax error. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should go back and like correct the syntax error. It's kind of similar, I think, where actually looking at the failed output is really interesting, understanding why it went all right, instead of saying like, oh, it's not intelligent enough. It's like, no, it's a language model, right? It's like it completes, it's still a very understandable kind of thing under the hood. And let me start some things while we talk, because like the Manus is like,
Sure.
I just put that in the background and then I just actually start doing the real work, which is I want to build a doodle calendar sync clone, make a architecture sketch. And so I'll fire off like a bunch of those. Um, Actually, I forgot something here. I'll start another one. Um, it should have AI chat functionality to populate and modify the schedule, design a YAML DSL for the actions. So that's like a little abracadabra thing. You can just put that everywhere and interesting stuff will come out.
Interesting. Okay, I've never tried that. Um, okay, so is this a normal workflow for you that you will in parallel have something that's sort of building a prototype where you have kind of low expectations that it's going to be, totally useful long term, and then also at the same time having a different AI model working on building an architecture for the real thing?
So yeah, I think of it as I want useful output out of LLMs. So it doesn't mean I want like a concrete thing necessarily. I want to have like words that are like kind of useful to output. Like here, it's outputting SVG. Like I've like I prompted it to build an app, and it's outputting SVG. That's interesting, but we'll see. It's because I said make an architecture sketch, right? So this is an example where it didn't do what I wanted it to do, and now I can understand. Oh, why was that? It's like, well, you put like architecture sketch in here, so
It's making it
these two
literally
words,
a visual sketch.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is interesting, right? Which is like actually pretty cool. Also, it looks cool, um, and you can already tell how expansive Sonnet is. It's just like it added all this stuff like participant panel, like what? you know,
Yeah.
Settings and calendar sync. Like I never told about calendar sync, right?
So yeah,
And then I
so
also see it. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna ask. So, I mean, this does look cool. I agree. But I do wonder, like, how much do you get out of it? Like, is this an example of some good output, or is this something where you would say this is not useful to me? I'm just gonna go back and try a different prompt.
No, this is useful. If
Okay.
only to say like, please do less.
Okay.
Um,
Got it.
right. But if you consider that often you work in like a team context, for example, right?
Hmm.
I mean, this is like the most boring architecture in a way, but it's like a great way to discuss things with a colleague versus
Hmm.
like having to write it down or like having to draw it on the whiteboard. Um, and then you can print it out and then start drawing on it on paper. So, for the 10 seconds this took, this is like a pretty useful output, even if it's not what I wanted, which is I want to build like a prototype React thing. And what I'll do with all these like things starting in parallel, right? It's like gather ideas in a way, but also like identifying the stuff that's more useful. So for example, the YAML DSL here for scheduling actions is like, I kind of want to have something like that maybe generated by an LLM, for example,
Okay.
right? Which is like, oh, well, if the LLM outputs YAML blocks, those are pretty simple to interpret. And they also like, they're kind of like tool definitions, right? Like if you don't want to use the name YAML DSL and you prefer thinking of it as like tool calls, for example, then use tool calls. But the cool thing about this is like I can take this prompt, right, and I could save it into a new project. So let me create a new project. This is a vibe coded tool to manage like my project. I've never looked at the source code. I don't know how it works. But it serves me right. Like it does Git checkouts and work trees and all of that. And what I'll do if I open cursor into this workspace, so today's workspace, the doodle clone, I'll open it. Probably have to zoom in a little bit on the cursor. Zoom in, zoom in. I think this is going to be a good size.
Looks good. Yep.
I'll start gathering all these like intermediate artifacts, which are varying quality. It's not something I'm necessarily going to go back to. I'll start putting them into a directory that I call ttemp, which is just like a temp directory with dates, where I put all these like intermediate documents that I use when working with LLMs. So you can see here, this is not a directory this is not a project where I do a lot of coding itself in, but you can see that I don't know what I was doing in July. I was like designing a CLI for Redis Monitor.
Okay.
So all of this stuff is just like generated by Claude. I was like, yeah, this looks cool. I want to build that. And I'll just put it in here and then start doing a little bit more real engineering, as I call it, which is using cursor, right? Where maybe I have like still look a little bit more closely at the code or things like this. But for example, this YAML DSL, I kind of scrolled through it. I'm like, yeah, this looks decent enough, right? And it's what I'm going to do now is like create a CLI tool. Oh my God, create a CLI tool to parse YAML actions and execute them for a doodle clone and SQLite. Like, I don't know, it's horrible prompting.
Sure. Yeah.
Store in Go Labs command experiments. So because I do so many of them, I started developing like a little organizing structure. Self-contained, but use parent mod. I'm not going to link it. And then I'll start that, right? So this is GPT-5 high fast, which means it's still going to take 50 minutes. But here's another
Sure.
little like component of it, which is a CLI tool, right? Which is fairly straightforward to understand, which allows me to validate that the DSL parsing works. But I can then give it to the LLM agent and say like, oh, you have a CLI tool now to validate and execute this DSL. Use that in the next session, if that makes sense.
Okay, so let me see if I can summarize where we are right now, and see if I missed anything. So,
Yeah,
so you opened a couple of different tabs. One was to say, hey, just try to one shot actually building this app. Okay, this was the oh, sorry, no, that was the Manus. I think was where you did
yeah.
that one.
So
Yeah,
Manus is still it's
still
still
working.
running, right? But
Okay,
we can maybe look at some of the first artifacts in here. It's probably like
well,
starting
it's okay.
to like browse its
Let me see if
own.
I can finish summarizing, then we can
Yeah.
kind
So
of take a look at what it's come
sorry.
out with. Okay, so there was that, and then there was also the architecture sketch, which I think was in ChatGPT. Was that where that was?
Yeah, and,
Yeah. Okay.
and we haven't even looked at it, right? Um,
And then okay, so
And
then there was also the YAML DSL for executing actions. And so that was basically the business logic written out as YAML. And since this YAML DSL for calendar app logic is not something you can just pull off the shelf and be like, hey, npm install YAML DSL for creating a Doodle clone. What you're doing right now over in Cursor is you're making it, you're asking Cursor to, or what, sorry, it was GPT-5 High, I think.
ChatGPT, this is
Uh,
just ChatGPT 5 in the web UI.
oh, yeah. Sorry. I mean, like back in Cursor, you're using
Oh,
GPT-5 High to generate an actual interpreter for this DSL so that the DSL is actually executable by the machine, the YAML
yeah,
DSL that was created earlier by ChatGPT. Um,
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
cool. So then I guess the next and then you also have the SVG architecture diagram, which this is not aware of. So this what you're looking at right here is only aware of here is a YAML DSL, and I'm going to make an interpreter for it so that you a command line interpreter. And so I guess the goal there is that then, like you were saying, that's not immediately useful, but it's going to be useful in future things that you do because it will mean that you're able to express things in terms of this DSL and get some actual CLI output, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be really useful, like the YAML DSL thing, because it's deterministic, because they're like small files. They're a really good way of encoding, like say, unit tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or by virtue of the LLM having come up with this language, right? Like I didn't give it any design criteria, just said like, oh, yeah, make a YAML DSL. By the virtue
Mm-hmm.
of the LLM having produced that DSL, it's kind of like easy for the LLM to generate the DSL in a way, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
starting to use symbols that might be complicated or say like, please do it in Haskell with this syntax and like start derailing things. It's like whatever you come up with, like I don't really care about it, to be honest. Just do what you think is best as long as I'm like, okay. So in a way, it's like auto-generating the package you were talking about.
Well, you
It's
did
like, oh,
mention
it'd
it
be
should use
great to
Go,
have this
right?
package. Yeah.
Because you said use go.mod in the original prompt in Cursor. Um, so I guess, and I think you mentioned React in one of the browser tabs. So I think it knows that you want React and Go, right?
So here it doesn't know anything about web. I might have something about React. Actually, I think I have HTMX in my agents MD, which I should
Oh, there you
remove.
go.
But yeah, my standard axe is just like Go, which I think works really really well with LLMs, and then React because I'm used to it, and I think also works pretty well with LLMs overall.
Cool.
Um,
I also noticed I see
so
AMP at the top here. Is that a plugin or?
so
Oh, it's just a separate
Encode
tab.
is what I used to use before GPT-5 came out.
Hmm.
And now GPT-5 came out, and I'm not never using it anymore.
Okay. So what
Because
what do you like about GPT-5 compared to whatever you were using before?
it just reasons well. So one thing that I just wasn't able to do with Sonnet was like kind of refactoring things, and Sonnet just like
Hmm.
likes piling things, in a sycophantic way on top of the code you already have.
Uh-huh.
So if you ask it like, integrate these two features, it's going to generate 800 lines of code. GPT-5 is going to think for 20 minutes. It's going to remove 3 lines and add two and be like, yeah, it's integrated, which is I mean, it's very different, right? Like writing a web UI with GPT-5 is something where I don't use it because you will ask GPT-5, oh, make like a UI for me to administer my users. And what it will come up with is like a 4-line HTML thing with a text area in which you can paste JSON and say like update users. And it's like, yeah, this is technically correct, but it's kind of not what I wanted.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that's the one area where I found GPT-5 a little bit hard to go with. And what I'll usually do is use Sonnet to generate either a plan if it's a CLI or actually generate like React prototypes
Hmm.
that are going to be like pretty sloppy overall, and then just put GPT-5 on it and say like, can you clean this up?
Okay. So you
Which I
use
guess is something we will do, right?
yeah. So you like to use Sonnet for the initial version and then GPT-5 to turn that initial version into something more robust and maintainable.
I'll use Sonnet for UIs. That's
Okay.
like kind of I'll use it to like flesh out documents as well because GPT-5 is a little bit cryptic. But usually I try to avoid it. It's kind of like my little enemy.
Documents as in like specifications?
Yeah. So right. So for example, here we don't have like a clean specification of the YAML
Yeah,
DSL. So I can do that. Create a spec for the YAML DSL and store in, what is it? Go Labs TTEM 250923. You'll see what I mean by cryptic. Um,
okay, so this is
and
not what you would normally do,
then
because normally you would do this with Sonnet rather than GPT-5.
no, I'll do it with GPT-5. And then if I see that it's like a little bit too cryptic, I'll be like, Sonnet, please add a paragraph to each section,
I
something
see.
like that.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
Let me just do some, see the vibe coded tool
Sure.
has a bug, which I have to work around. So
Ah,
it's
gotcha.
been worked around. So let me just restart the language server and then restart, like, there's something that bugs me about, yeah, anyway. So yeah, so I'll work like this, right? Like this is kind of a little bit sped up, but it's still roughly the way I would do things. Um, and so here we can see that we kind of have a doodle clone with like 0 actions, right? Like I just said AI chat functionality and minimal, so I only added that. Um,
Right.
I wonder if it's actually hooked up to the real delete the meeting on Tuesday. I don't think it's real. Um, okay. So hook up the real Claude API, use YAML DSL to parse the actions, minimal DSL, just a few actions. So this is me hating Sonnet because I don't want it to add like 800 features.
Okay.
Um, we'll see where
Okay,
that
so
goes,
this
right? But
is
I'll like start iterating. And one thing I like doing as well is that I don't want to burn my Claude credits because they really drill down on it, but I'll just like build 4 at the same time. And then, you
oh,
know,
I see. Like just have multiple attempts and then pick the one that you like the best. Okay, yeah. So this is full on vibe coding in the sense that you're not looking at any of the code here. You're just you tried out the app that it built and observed that its behavior was not what you wanted, and so you went back and instructed it. But you didn't. Interestingly, you did go back and give it a more specific instruction. I noticed it wasn't that you said, hey, this feature isn't working, but rather you said, hook up the Claude API because you have an intuition for under the hood what's probably missing there.
um, sorry, come again. I was like
Uh,
busy looking at
yeah.
my files.
So I noticed that just in the interaction that you just did, although you're not looking at the code, you do have a guess as to what the problem with the code is. In other words, you tried out the app, you observed that it wasn't able to delete the events, and rather than saying, "Hey, I can't delete the events," by telling the AI to do that, your guess is, "I don't think it wired up the Claude API," even though you haven't looked at the code. That's just kind of your intuition. And so you tell it, go wire up the Claude API for real, rather than telling it,
Yeah,
for example, I tried to delete an event on Tuesday and it didn't work.
yeah, and I think that's like the vibe coding skill, right? Like I think it's really a skill that is hard to learn and hard to practice in the sense that the more you do it, the more you'll be like, oh yeah, Claude from March has this behavior, and I've tried like long enough to realize that this is like a good way to prompt it to get it out of there.
Hmm.
So the more you do it, the more, and obviously the more you have fundamental knowledge of computer science or like software engineering, the easier it will be to be like, just like add an ID parameter.
Yeah.
So despite not looking at the code, you'll be like, I think, and there's just like maybe peek at the code and be like, yeah, it doesn't have an ID in the database, prompt it, and then it fixes it. Um, because these things are expensive, right? It's like I can say this doesn't work. Not only do I know that Sonnet won't probably really understand that, but if I give that to GPT-5, it will just like run for 10 minutes and then tell me
Hmm.
like, you're missing an ID field in the database.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, I could have done that in 10 seconds. But also maybe the first time I'll be like, hey, I can't do this. Like, tell me why. And
Hmm.
then learn from it, right? Like so learning is kind of part of the workflow here. There's not much that I don't really know here technically in the project that I'm building, but some of the projects I'll try to always be really adventurous. Like I've been working a lot with Vault, which I don't know much about. So I've
Never
vibed a
heard of
lot
it.
of tools about Vault, which is to store secrets.
Oh,
Um,
like HashiCorp Vault or
yeah, exactly,
got it. Okay, I have heard of
exactly.
that one. Yeah.
And so one thing that I vibed is like this Vault env generator, which is turned into like a more common general purpose kind of tool to deal with a Vault. And so at the same time, as I was building the tool, just saying like, oh, I want to seed the Vault from a YAML file, for example, I was learning more and more about how Vault works. So I would have it generate like tutorials for me to understand how what I just generated works, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I still haven't read the code of this, but I kind of know pretty well how it works because I've asked it to explain like a lot of these things as it went. And I also have a lot of experience to know like, yeah, this code kind of has like roughly the right shape, so I don't need to read it in detail. It's like roughly what I expected.
Do
Um,
you feel nervous about a tool for managing secrets where you haven't read the code?
Not really, because like that's the tool's job, right? Like that's Vault's job to make sure that I don't do like stupid stuff.
I
So
see. So you're trusting the I see. So this is a wrapper around Vault, and you're trusting that Vault itself is sufficiently hardened against I don't know, user error or LLM error that it's going
so
to be okay.
no, so I mean I make it sound it might sound a little bit flippant the way I describe it, but so actually this is a good document. So this is stuff from work. So like hopefully I don't have like credentials in here. Um, but as I was learning about Vault, I was like, it's like great to have a root token here that I can do everything with, but I really don't want to. So I learned about app roles, I learned about policies. I was able to design like 12 policies and say like, oh, how can I log in with like Google over OIDC? And so it taught me these like way more advanced things because I was like, I want to use a vibe coded tools. I've got to be a little bit careful about what I do. So
Hmm.
teach me how to restrict my access to really only have like audited read access. And then it told
Gotcha.
me like you can make an app role, turn on the audit, send the audit to Datadog, like all of these things I like learned in the process of building it. I really don't care how you hook up Datadog to this. Like that's really like I want to know that I can hook up Datadog to it. Like I really don't care about how you do it. Like I've done that enough in my life to be man, I really don't care. But I've been able to learn about all about these like policies. I've got like Terraform to rotate my tokens. Everything's rotated every 2 hours. Like all of that stuff is like now really, really locked down. I still haven't read the code of my tool. Um,
So how do you know it's or what gives you confidence, I should say, that it's actually, for example, rotating the tokens every 2 hours? Is that also sort of like black box external observation, or like you, for example, maybe you go and look and see like are the tokens rotated, every 2 hours or
Yeah. So the tool allows you to see if the tokens are rotated, and then I learned it pretty quickly that if they're not rotated, nothing works anymore, which is
hmm,
exactly what I wanted, right? And so I'll be like, so for example, like in our Doodle clone, I think it like we created this CLI tool, right?
right? Oh, it's
So
done. Okay.
you know, yeah, write a tutorial and run it and make sure things work. Store a tutorial in um, next to the other docs. And so because it has a CLI tool now, I can just be like, write a tutorial, then make it work. It will probably fail. It will update the tutorial until like the tutorial matches the thing that works.
Hmm.
And so at that point, I do have a tutorial that I know has been vetted. And because I've spent so much time building these kind of CLI tools, I know what I'm asking right now is like going to be in the safe zone of what it can do.
Hmm.
Um, and but I only know these safe zones because I always try to like purposefully go past them, right? Because at the end of the day, if like all of this like AGI stuff like becomes real, um, I don't know, man. Like I have no idea if this like works or not. Like I have absolutely no idea what it did here.
Right.
Um, but the more I try, the more I'm like also set up to recognize when the tools get better. because suddenly things that were just like failing all the time previously suddenly work. And so I'm ready for the next iteration. And it's like, okay, now it's able to generate, say, a full React front end for Doodle, for example. I've
Yeah.
got it successfully going. So what's the next step from that, right? It's like, I wouldn't know what the next step would be. It's like, oh, add a full like Google SSO login part, which I wasn't able to like one shot before.
Uh-huh.
Um, those are like the kind of like, for example, here is like, I haven't done this like Claude API call like correctly. Um, I don't really know how to prompt it because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
Um,
Well, there you go.
sometimes I have to put my key in, sometimes not. So I'm not fully sure. Add a settings modal for me to paste my key.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do
Um,
that over live stream, but
well, the thing is that the modal is like already populated often. I'm not like I don't know exactly what's going on. It's like, see, this is something I should explore a little bit more. I haven't done it too much. Yesterday I vibed something very similar and it worked like without the credential being exposed. And I was like, I don't know where this is coming from, but
I
it
wonder
worked.
if it sometimes happens that it might, I guess, well, so since you're specifically using that was you were using Claude to make something that uses a Claude API key. So one explanation there might be that it knows what your API key is and is able to fill it in. Another one might just be that maybe there's some API in its training set or something, and it kind of like hallucinated one that's hooked up somewhere that someone's paying for or something like that.
No, no,
Or maybe
it
there's an
was mine.
example
And like
one.
that's something they advertise, the fact that you can hook up the Claude API. But I
Hmm.
haven't like really unlocked the prompt that makes it work directly. It might also have been my password manager that populated it, right? Like that. I'm not fully sure. Or it might have been a local storage under a key that a previous thing worked. So I'm not sure why this guy is like uh, build the program and then go through the tutorial. I'm not
I
sure
think it's
why it's
because
like
you're in
failing to
ask mode
run.
in the lower left.
Oh, yeah, good catch. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. I
I
don't
must
actually use
have,
cursor, but we have an equivalent thing in Z, so I assume that's what that
yeah,
meant.
you're right. I was like, why is it not writing the tutorials and all of that? So good
Yeah,
catch. And what I would do here is just like, I'll go back in the conversation, right?
sure.
Yeah, this is going to take, I was like, it's really fast. What is going on?
So it seems like that's the main thing that you're using cursor for here is that it's not so much that you're trying to read and interact with and update the code. In this context, you're really just using it to have local agent access. You kind of could just be using a command line interface for what you're doing right here, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I use it also to edit code that's like more precise. But
Hmm.
if I have to do that, like probably I didn't understand what I'm building well enough.
Okay,
Because I
so
mean, this is like the purest CRUD app, right? Like there's like no real magic to it. It's like once you think about it, it's fairly straightforward what it should be. Like I shouldn't have to write the code for this.
mhm.
Because I know like this is a great UI,
Yeah.
if you look at the UI, it's like, well, it's pretty clear how it's going to be OC. And man, this is, what is it doing? Like Claude is really letting me down lately. Um,
Okay, so well, let's actually focus on that interaction. So that was basically whatever change it made. Obviously, there's like a blank screen now, right? So I'm guessing if you were to open up the browser console, you'd see a JavaScript error, some runtime exception or something, and it's not able to render anymore. But from your perspective, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to try and debug that. You're just going to basically say, let's just rewind time to back before it messed everything up and just try again with the same prompt and just sort of re-roll the dice and see if it can do it
yeah,
correctly on a second attempt.
yeah, and as said, like if I wasn't on the stream now, I'd be like, I really want to figure this API key stuff out. Like, but
Hmm.
this is clearly like some kind of Claude bug. I've run into so many weird things lately because I tried retry and then it like didn't retry.
I
Um,
see. So this is not just the LLM giving you undesired output, but actually like the Claude's interface having a bug, like the
yeah,
Claude.ai
or
website
or
thing.
behaving weirdly, which is also useful knowledge, right? If you're doing vibe coding, this is if you look at it, I've spent maybe like 10 seconds putting in what I want, and then I'm just like starting to fight for minutes with the tool itself.
Right.
It's like, what is my day to day like? It's like, am I just dealing with like tool errors, tool bugs?
Right.
Um,
So you mentioned earlier that if this were, something you were doing more seriously, you might have like four of them running in parallel just to get four different attempts. But you mentioned that, well, then, that costs more, et cetera. Do you have a sense of how much like an exploration like this ends up costing? Or I don't know, like, are you paying for that or somebody else paying for that, or how does that work?
so I have the GPT Pro plan, so like the
Okay.
$200 a month. I've never hit any limits with it. So I also use like Codex CLI, but often Codex CLI, I fight the sandbox more than I get stuff done. So I often like won't use it. I like the Codex, like all of them are kind of equivalent at the end of the day, right? Like if you like Cloud Code, then like that's cool. Um,
So
I
what is it that makes you want to use a CLI versus an editor like Cursor or like Zed? Like what, clearly you're using a mix of the browser and a code editor that's got AI integrated into it. Um, some people definitely prefer CLI. Like I've seen someone in the chat mention that they just kind of do everything in the CLI. Like how do you think about those trade-offs? Like what do you like about, one modality versus the other?
uh, I like terminal UIs quite a bit, so I'll often like add a terminal UI functionality to my stuff. But the thing about CLIs is that the LLM can use them, and the LLM can write shell scripts with them. And I have what I haven't shown. It's like we're getting towards the end, but I have a library that allows me to do like struct output in terminal, and also has like the concept of a how to describe the input output parameters of CLI tool slash,
Mhm.
function slash API slash, they're all the same at the end of the day. So I just need to point it to this file and say like, you please port whatever thing you did to my framework. And then with this framework, I know that in 2 lines of code, I can turn it into an MCP, for example. So I have these
Mhm.
like pre-packaged components. Why does it want to run RM? That's the part where you have to be a little bit careful about. All
Yeah.
right. See, and like here, the tutorial doesn't fully work. It's like, well, there's a flag that doesn't work. So it will correct itself. And while it's doing that, um, I can like go back to my paper, like look at the UX. But I know that when I'll come back in 20 minutes or so, I will have a finished tutorial.
Okay.
Um,
Now, so this is something where I guess you mentioned, so Codex would be OpenAI's. Like OpenAI makes GPT-5, which is your model of choice for this type of thing, and Codex is their CLI. So is the only reason that you would use Cursor over Codex just that uh, it's got a better permissions model, or is there something else that you prefer about the Cursor experience over the Codex CLI experience?
I like seeing the files on the left, kind of like
Mm.
the diffs a little bit more. But I'm also fine with Codex CLI. Like usually it's just because sometimes I'll just like start fighting the sandbox and end up doing approval everything,
Uh-huh.
which is going to be something that I want to work on pretty soon. Which is like, oh, how can I let the model just like completely YOLO everything without being prone to any kind of dangerous behavior? So this
Right.
like vault work was pretty good because I want to be able to provision, maybe Docker's like enough security sandboxing
Hmm.
to provision like a container. So like, look, you've got this vault token. It's like valid for 30 minutes. Everything will be rotated afterwards if ChatGPT, if OpenAI let me do that. And that way I can say like, prompt injection, like I don't really care. At least I'll have an audit log of whatever you've accessed. You don't have any credential files lying around, like that kind of stuff, so that I can just be like, I don't care about sandboxing. Just like, go ahead. You can't delete, can see, you can do anything that's like critical to me. And that's where like the YAML stuff comes in. Is like as long as I generate YAML, I have very tight control over the sandboxing of it. Yet I
Interesting.
can build a lot of features that are actually relevant to my app, right?
I
So
gotcha.
I can vibe a lot of stuff and be really sure that it doesn't do anything
Gotcha.
critical.
Okay, so
Um,
you mentioned earlier, just following up on a couple of previous things. One was you mentioned, I think you said you're using the OpenAI like 200 a month plan or something like that, the like unlimited, I don't know what it's called, but
yeah,
okay, so then for
premium
the
pro, I don't know.
then for
Pro
the
it
Claude
says.
stuff that you're doing, that's just like the free tier, I guess.
That's a $20 a month one.
Okay.
Um, and I'm really frustrated with it. It's like, I don't know.
Okay.
I used to love it.
Got it.
I used to love it so much, and now I'm like just like, oh man, every time I'm like not having fun. So I think fun is like an important part of it as well, right?
Sure.
Um, so see, this is the kind of jank that like Manus can come up with. Where it's like, oh, you wrote all of this React, and like that's what I see. Like, what's going on? And it could be that it
Yeah.
was like, oh, there's too many React bugs. I'm going to make like a Perl shell script or something. You're like, okay.
Gotcha.
um,
Okay, well just kind of keep an eye on the clock. Like why don't we kind of sort of just like you said at the beginning, it's hard to get something like this completed in 45 minutes. So maybe it'd be good
well,
at this point.
we have a CLI tool to do
Okay.
actions, right? Like it created a poll, it did a add slot, vote slot, finalize, like it did all of these things. So we have like a really solid basis to start with.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
And let
say. Is like
me
why don't we talk through sort of like, if we weren't gonna run out of time, like where would you go next to iterate with this and work towards getting something that taking it from this early sketch prototype kind of stage to something where you're like, this is actually a production app that I can ship, and the vibe coded stuff that we've gotten up to this point, like how do we or how would you normally think about transitioning from where you are now to something that you're comfortable saying, okay, this is ready for production?
so um, this is already like pretty good code, right? I knew it would use the repository pattern, for example, to store state, which is cool for maybe a first prototype, but pretty quickly I'd be like, oh, can you port this to use like XYZ framework that I like well? Um, right, but this like little nugget that we just vibe, which is the CLI tool, I can start building like a package out of it. And actually, I do have something on my iPad to show that. Um,
Okay.
the way I think about it is like instead of running things in parallel on a big project and like trying to synchronize all of these things with sub agents and whatever, I'm like more to have a finished project. I have all these little nuggets that I need to plug together,
Hmm.
which maps like usually team roles and things like this, right? And it's like, what architecture can I use so that I can vibe code each of these nuggets and then put them all together and don't need to worry about this one nugget needing to really know about the other side of the barrier.
Hmm.
Um, so once I have like we created like a fair amount of documents already. I have like a tutorial, I have a spec, I have like a web UI prototype. I have all of these little documents that I would then put together. So I already put the YAML DSL and generated like kind of a CLI tool plus a database schema out of it and integrated all of that. The next part is going to be like, well, I have a web UI that looks pretty slick in Claude Code. I'm just going to paste the JavaScript, the React code and say like, please serve that from my Go. And then I'll be like, oh, you have the database schema and the DSL, make a make an API for it. And then I'll be like, oh, you've got the DSL, like please build the LLM parsing setup, right?
Oh, interesting. So you keep the DSL in production, like the YAML DSL that's powering all this?
Yeah, not only do I have to because I need to have the LLM generate actions, but it's in a way it's like the core API of the whole project, right?
I see. Okay, so that's
Um,
that's not just is that something that's specific to this doodle use case, or is that something where just in general, like doing a YAML DSL is like the approach that you would go with when you're having the LLM write everything?
I use it pretty much for everything
Okay.
because it's just a way of like, oh, it's a slightly more formal way of doing natural language, right? Like if you think of LLMs as transformers, like an
Hmm.
LLM doesn't know if it's writing code or if it's writing natural language. It's just like generating tokens, right? And if you look at YAML often, like let's look at this YAML DSL a little bit more closely because uh, um, this is something a normal human can understand, right? like if you give this to someone who's not a programmer, they'll kind of be able to say like, well, I'm adding slots from 10 p.m. to 10:45 to a doodle because it's actually just like natural language transformed a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but it's formal enough that I can suddenly interpret it as code. And if you start doing embeddings on these things, it becomes really interesting because the embedding of this is going to be like pretty much the same as the embedding of the natural language formulation of it. But if you look at the code to add slots or like the SQL statements to do this, then you start like going away from it. So because the way I prompt LLMs is going to be more like, oh, add a slot to XYZ, it's great, right? Like then it's going to transform add a slot to XYZ to like dash action is equal to add slot and then target XYZ. Is like, yeah, this is something that a small model can do pretty well. So back in the days where I was programming with like DaVinci or ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo or so, this was like kind of the only way to do things
Uh-huh.
because they couldn't really write code that wouldn't like get derailed after 200 tokens. And the
So
other
how
thing is that
I was
it's
just gonna ask
very
about
few tokens, right?
oh, I see. Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of optimizing for an it's almost like LLM maintainability, so to speak, with the YAML DSL. It's sort of like you have this upfront investment, which as we saw was not it didn't take a ton of time for at least to get a tutorial up and running of interpreting the YAML DSL. And then the benefit is that now from now on you can add features in a way that is more conducive to the LLM. I guess there's definitely some runtime performance costs, right? Because now Go is interpreting the YAML DSL at runtime as opposed to just doing Go code, right?
Well, it depends because I mean, YAML parsing is like not the end of the world, or it can be transformed to JSON. Like that doesn't really matter. But what you can also do is like, oh, you can build like a code generator, right? You can build
Mm,
a compiler that takes the DSL and then generates like your code or generates things that then are performant. Um,
interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes a
um,
lot of sense. Gotcha.
and so here's an example of like why this DSL stuff is really cool is that suddenly you can say like, oh, I have a meeting for my local Pelican hobbyist club or
Oh, we're
whatever
still
with
looking at
three busy
the iPad.
schedules. Oh, sorry. Oh, I was showing all these things on the computer. Yeah, now things make a little bit more sense why.
Oh, yeah, we
Uh,
do need to wrap up though.
yeah,
But
I was just showing like, right, you can do these prompts very easily where you can suddenly say like, oh, I want to have the code to do a meeting with like XYZ and have like
mhm,
really advanced unit tests, for example, right? Like this is not trivial.
right.
Um, but also like really cool examples of how this is going to work. Like if the LLM is able to generate this in my chat, it's going to be able to generate this. So I kind of already have the app running. I have like a simulated version of the app right now running, which is also pretty like yet another technique.
Yeah, gotcha. Wow. Okay. Anything else we should I don't know, you want to make sure to mention before we wrap up? This has been really interesting. You use a number of techniques here that I had never seen anyone use, and also that I had not personally thought to try. So thank you so much for sharing all of them.
This is kind of like, I mean, it sounds stupid, but I think this is really important to keep in mind that these things, like the end goal is really to say like, I want a doodle clone with like chat functionality, right?
Mhm.
And we're already like really close, right? Like it's really, really freaking close to the models just being able to generate that and having it be like a great result. So I have no worries that like, or worries. I do have, I don't know where this is going to lead us, but like in 6 months, I could see this like being part of this is where we're at now. It's like I can say make a doodle clone and add like payment and subscription and just put it up. Um, more like more like that close to it. Last year you would have told me that, right? And be like, well, I know this is where we're going to get to. I didn't don't expect us to be there in a year,
Uh-huh.
um, but we're there. And and so yeah, really recommend people try to. I mean, you've seen like I had
Yeah, you didn't
existing
look at the code at all,
documents, like
really. I mean,
nothing. I
yeah.
didn't look at the code. I looked at the DSL a little bit more closely, right?
Hmm.
Um, but and still, what's coming out? I mean, not I do have like 25 years of experience now building stuff, but like this is pretty decent code. Like I don't necessarily like
Yeah,
this
I
all that
don't I
much,
don't know
but
Go, so I can't really review it, but
yeah, but it's like pretty small, right? It's like it's been tested and runs.
I'll
It's
just have to take your word for it. But
yeah,
as a non-Go programmer, um, cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we got to wrap up, but this has been really, really interesting to watch, and thank you so much for taking the time to and the tokens to share like what your actual workflow looks like when you're doing this style. And I definitely appreciate your perspective about this being a tool in the toolbox, not an all or nothing, type of thing. And yeah, I mean, we have now seen like in practice, like what does it look like to actually use this technique to get something out of it. So yeah,
yeah.
thank
I
you so
do
much.
have I do have streams on YouTube that are like 10 hours long where you can see like the not so rosy part of it,
Wow.
because right, because it's not like I'm building 3 apps like every 2 hours or so. But there you get to see like the whole workflow from start to end with like a little bit more
Much,
time
yeah,
to
much
absorb
longer
it.
time window. Yeah, makes sense. All right. Thanks so much. Yeah, we got a link to your um
Cool. Yeah.
account so people can check out your other stuff. And yeah, thanks again. And for everybody else, yeah, looking forward to the next one where we'll have a different topic. And thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.